Good morning, my name is Parker. Welcome to Third City Christian Church and happy Easter. Connect with God, the church, and your purpose in unexpected, life-changing ways through Rooted. It's an experience that provokes questions, conversations, and offers you a group experience designed to give you a glimpse of your story and God's story. Rooted summer registrations are open now. Summer dates are May 19th through July 28th with sessions on Sundays from 4 to 6 p.m. For more information, visit thirdcityc.org/rooted. Join Team Kenya this Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. here in the plaza for an evening of art and appetizers. The instructor will guide you through the step-by-step process, and you'll go home with a painting that you can call uniquely yours. It's easy, it's fun, and it's totally stress-free. All proceeds go towards the Third City Kenya missions trip, and you can check your bulletin for more information. The Global Leadership Summit is coming to Third City August 8th and 9th. All Third City members and attenders can register now for a discounted rate of $89. Register on our website or email Laura Quant for more information. We exist to worship God, to serve Him with our lives, and to grow as followers of Jesus Christ. Third City is Love Unlimited.
Welcome to Third City Christian Church. Would you stand with us this evening as we worship? Celebrate Jesus Christ, who died on a cross and arose 3 days later. We're excited to share this night with you because God has you here for a reason. Jesus brought you here because He knows your name, as we're going to hear this evening. So as we sing this song out tonight, and as we glorify His name, I want you to start thinking about that. You came to this room tonight because Jesus called you to this room. He has you here for a reason. Sing this out.
Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the burst of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring. The praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. And you have no
celebrate his powerful name this evening, would you greet each other around you as we continue in worship? As you make your way back to your seats, you can have a seat.
Well, we are really excited you're here today, and whether you're joining us from Broken Bow or across the world in England or right here at Third City, we're glad you're here. And if you are new to our church, we'd love to have you stop out at the hub as you're leaving. They have a gift for you, and the rumor is that there are peanut butter cups involved. So, hey, why wouldn't you, right? Anyway, we're glad you're here. There were two elderly friends, Frank and Lou, and they went every day to the same cafe, every day the same cup of coffee, every day probably the same old stories. And they did share something in common, that every day they talked about their love for baseball. Well, one day they made a pact. They said, now whoever goes first, you got to come back and tell me if there's baseball in heaven. That sounded reasonable. Well, sure enough, the inevitable occurred, and Lou died, and devastated, his buddy Frank went to the same cafe, the same booth, ordered a cup of coffee, and thought about his friend. After a while, he heard a voice. It was Lou's voice. Psst, Frank, Frank, is that you, Lou? He said. Yeah. Hey, I've got some good news and some not so good news for you. He said, okay, well, what's the good news? He says, well, the good news is there's baseball in heaven. I play every day. He said, well, that's great. What's the not so good news? Well, the not so good news is you're pitching on Tuesday. There are a lot of people who get freaked out about dying. And, I don't know. Maybe that was just good news, right? That would be unexpected, though, to find good news in a tomb or good news in death, because we don't think about death that way. But the resurrection of Jesus is the best news that we could possibly have on a day like today. It's the unexpected good news of eternity. And that's why we celebrate all across the world. There will be literally millions, we hope billions of people who will stop to thank God for Jesus and the resurrection. Now, it wasn't so good news initially, was it? I mean, here's how it went down. His followers, they were expecting a conquering hero, but what they got was a crucified friend. They were expecting a king on a throne, but instead they got a body in a tomb. They believed that they would celebrate a grand victory, but instead it was the most jarring defeat imaginable. They thought that they were going to go to a big celebration, but instead they went to a funeral. Everything they expected failed to deliver. Now, we call it Good Friday, but for them, it wasn't so good. You might say it was pretty black, it was dark. But here is where the unexpected begins. Everyone, I just think that everyone here, we come into this place and we come for different reasons, and I think most of us come because we're excited to hear this story. And yet, I wonder if we really come with the kind of energy that this day should bring. The energy that celebrates the biggest moment for all of us for eternity, the resurrection. Because every one of us needs to experience the unexpected at Easter. An unexpected new beginning. It all started back then, and John chapter 20 talks about it. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb, and she saw that the stone had been moved from the entrance, had been removed. Now, Mary Magdalene was one of the core followers of Jesus. Jesus had healed her from seizures that she suffered since she was young. Some of you know what it's like to have seizures. Some of you live with someone or love someone who suffers from seizures. And so you know how devastating it is. One moment you're fine, the next moment you're waking up on the floor and people are standing around you, and then you spend the next 2-3 days, week, recovering because you're so exhausted. Well, that was Mary before Jesus healed her. But then she became whole, and she devoted her life to following him. And so she became one of the core followers. She wanted everyone to experience who Jesus is. That's how she felt before Black Friday. On that Friday, she watched them brutally take his life. And she was in shock. You could say she was in a shock seizure after he died. It drained every hope that she possibly could have out of her soul. As Josh told you last week, when a person died, the loved ones would carefully prepare the body for burial by using all sorts of aloes and perfumes, and then they'd wrap the body like mummy-like and preserve it that way. But Jesus' death went right up against the Sabbath, and for the Jewish people, it would make them unclean to touch a dead body on the Sabbath, and so they hastily prepared the body for burial, and then they really just tossed it into this tomb and rolled a stone over the entrance. And all of their hopes and all of their dreams were buried in that tomb with Jesus. Make no mistake about that. Verse 1, following what I just said about Mary Magdalene, she went to the tomb, she saw the stone had been removed from the entrance. And don't miss this, it's crucial to see this. What was her assumption when she went to that tomb on Sunday? Was it that she would find it empty? Of course not. She only had one assumption, and that would be that if she could open the tomb, there would be a dead body there. Nobody expected. Nobody. Okay? Nobody. No one expected that. Verse 2, she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one who Jesus loved, and said, "They've taken the Lord out of the tomb, and I don't know where they put him." Now, Peter and John, they were laying low. They were afraid. They had some sense about them. They thought, if they will do that to Jesus, they'll do that to us too. And so they were hiding with others. You know, the enemies of Jesus hated him so much, they would have killed anyone who tried to resurrect a following of his. They would have them tortured and crucified as well. These enemies that murdered him would murder them. They knew this. So they heard what Mary said. They ran to the tomb because they were afraid that what would happen would be that his tomb would become a shrine for his followers. And so when Peter and John went to the tomb, they were afraid they'd be caught too because they were his followers. They went to the tomb. The body was gone. They assumed the worst. And I promise you, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what they were experiencing, but I can promise you this. They did not expect a resurrected Jesus because nobody expected nobody. So, picking up verse 11, now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. For the second time, she went back to the tomb. She still had something to do, and she had to figure out how to find his body to finish preparations. Jesus loves people like no one else loves people. Jesus did things for people that no other person could do for people. And Jesus saved her life. And so you can understand why maybe her emotions weren't emotions of hope, but rather maybe of anger. Now she's angry at those who would have come and taken his body. Maybe she's thrusting anger at God for letting his son die because she believed that about him. He's your son. Why would you allow this to happen? And so what happens next is powerful. It says, as she wept, she's in despair. She doesn't know what to do. She bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" Now, she didn't know she was talking to angels at that point. By the way, this encounter proves to us conclusively the facts about an age-old argument that's been occurring. Are angels male or female? This proves that angels are male. You know why? Because only a man would ask such an insensitive question at this time. Woman, why are you crying? So if your husband's like that, he might be an angel. I don't know. I doubt it. I doubt it. Why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for? They have taken my Lord away. I don't know where they put him. Now, what happens next just shows us how unexpected Jesus' resurrection was. And really, it still is. Verse 14. At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was him, that it was Jesus. And why is that? Because she was in a shock seizure. For us Christians, the resurrection of Jesus is the pivotal moment of our faith. We've had 2,000 years, well, however long we've been alive, but 2,000 years of history to figure this out, to know who he is. And I don't know if her eyes were clouded in tears. I don't know if she was still in shock. But she turns around and just stares back in the tomb because she saw that going on in there too, right? Now, this is just conjecture, but Jesus knew what was coming next. He was just standing there, and I wonder if he's had a huge grin on his face. Like he knows what's going to happen next. He knows what she's going to find out. And it had to be absolutely awesome for him to be on his side of that, right? So back to him, to Jesus, he says, "Who are you looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you put him. I will go get him." Now, when we read the Bible, we don't often see the humor in it because it seems like a pretty serious book most of the time, and it is. But it says she thought he was the gardener. She thought he was the tender of the graves, the grave digger. I think it's kind of funny. As a matter of fact, the rest of her life, Mary would have told this story countless times. And as soon as somebody found out who she was, "Oh, you mean you're the one who Jesus revealed himself to you alive at the tomb? You're that Mary? Tell me about it." So then she'd tell the story and she'd go over all the details of the story. And then she'd say, "It was totally unexpected. I thought I ran into the grave digger." And everybody would have laughed. Except you, apparently, because you don't think it's that funny. But they thought it was funny back in the first century. She probably was a better joke teller than I was. Why did she think he was the gardener? Because nobody expected, say it with me, nobody. The resurrection brings the unexpected. It brings unexpected beginnings. Now, here's where everything changes. Everything changes when Jesus calls her name. Verse 16. Jesus said to her, "Mary." I don't know. Try to hear her response. Did she just whisper, "Teacher? Rabbi?" This could not have been more unexpected. Jesus said, "Don't hold on to me. I've not yet ascended to my Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them the unexpected has happened. I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord." She told them the things that he had said to her. God chose Mary to be the first witness of Jesus' resurrection. Please understand this. In the first century, a woman could not testify in a court of law. Yet, when Jesus rose from the dead, the first witness was a woman. This is important on a lot of levels, but what it really proves is the Bible is true, and here's why. If people would have made up and concocted this story to tell it in the future, they no way would they have ever chosen a woman to be the first witness. There's no way. There's no way. She says, I have seen the Lord. The first person to say, I have seen the Lord alive, a woman. So ladies, if you would just indulge us today, I want you to say that. I'm going to count to 3, and after I count to 3, shout it out now. I have seen the Lord. Ready? 1, 2, 3. She saw the Lord. His resurrection was her new beginning. Now turn the corner with me. I don't think many of us today are a whole lot different than Mary. I would even venture to say that most of us don't come into a place like this today expecting the unexpected. We kind of know what's going to happen. I mean, if we've been to church before, we kind of know what's going to happen. I'm certain that there are people who are here today that are just here to give a nod to a long dead Jesus, and you're just saying, that's a great story way back then. Or there are those of you in a fog of confusion because you're really searching for something that God has for you, but you haven't been able to find it. And like Mary, you are stuck in Black Friday, and the resurrection is a new beginning, but you don't get it. It hasn't come to you. And even though it's Easter, you're like, my life's over. I'm toast. My hope, what hope? I don't have hope. I don't have a future. My heart is broken and it'll never be right again. It'll never be fixed. I'm at the end of my rope. I don't know where I'm going to go next. All that's left is to bury my past and hope that something comes out of it. For some of us, it might be a loss. It might be a death or a dream that's died, or it could be that you've lost something that was important to you and you just don't see it ever coming back. It could be any number of losses that you've experienced. For some of us, we live in the nightmare of a world of repeated addiction and destructive hurts and habits. And as much as we want to be free, over and over again, we just see the old tomb just slammed back shut again. And we go back in and we're just always entombed in this same old pattern of life. And it's always Black Friday for you. There are enough people in this room whose marriage at one time was vibrant and loving and even romantic, but every day now seems black and dead. Or maybe it's something with one of your kids. You've prayed and you've checked in and you've tried, but no matter what you've done, all you see is just this closed off tomb and no hope to get to the other side. But here's the good news. That was Friday. This is today. This is Resurrection Day. This is good news. Jesus makes every day Resurrection Day. And I believe that. I believe that we worship a God not of the dead, but of the living. We are raised. We are raised. I wanted to show you a story of a man who's figuring that out. Watch this.
My story starts, like so many other stories, with events that led to a condition, and then the condition led to crisis, and in living through that crisis, the opportunity to grow. It started with a medical condition that I had suffered with for nearly 20 years that had been misdiagnosed despite seeking help from several specialists. The condition led to chronic pain, chronic depression, chronic fatigue. As those symptoms got worse, it began to affect my work Eventually, I had to give up my professional career that I had worked a long time to build. And then the lack of income, the financial stress, the symptoms, all combined to really place a stress on my marriage. I found myself at a place where I was homeless, I was sick, I was broke, depressed, in almost every way broken. I got to the point where I had to give up, and I just let God have it. And I said, I don't know where we're going with this, but you have to fix this because I can't. Shortly after that, I was offered the opportunity to stay with a relative out of state to get some really world-class medical help. Finally got the diagnosis that I needed. The diagnosis led to treatment. Treatment led to opportunities to get help through counseling with spiritual counselors and mental health. I began to improve. I started to get a message, and first it was a random phone call from a relative who told me, John, God didn't do these things to you. He loves you just the way you are. And then there was a book that I picked up in the library just because I recognized the name of the author, and the book contained a whole chapter on how you can't grow emotionally without growing spiritually and connecting with God. And then there was the message that came from the psychologist that I had picked just because she was on the insurance approved list, was in network, who said that our relationship with God is the foundation of every 12-step program, and there's no way to really heal or grow with so many of these pains without His presence. And then I went to church on Sunday, and Scott was preaching about how we need to base our identity on what God says of us, not what other people say of us. And all of these things came together, and I finally realized that God was present in my life, and He was talking to me. And that was the single biggest change in my whole life. As my perspective began to change, I realized that God hadn't been laying waste to my life. He had been on a rescue mission. He had spent 20 years digging me out from under the rubble of all the things I had pulled in on top of myself. And it was in making that choice and believing that He was there to help me that has made all the difference in my life. And my name is John, and I have felt the presence of God, and I have heard His message in my life.
John said some good things there, but one thing that sticks out for me is he said that God had been talking to me, that God had been communicating with me through all of these things. And there's not a person in this room that hasn't had similar things to deal with. And God's tried to reach out to you. He's trying to say your name. And He's saying it, and are you listening? Are you hearing Him? Do you recognize Him? Do you recognize that He's speaking to you? Mary, she was living in Friday until the pivotal moment when He called her name. You know, in the next moments of the service, we're going to commune together. We do this every week here at Third City because we never want to forget the price that God paid to crucify our sins on the cross by sending Jesus. So we're going to do that, and we're going to remember. But I want to ask you to do something else during this time. Listen. Listen and think about how God has been saying your name. What has He been doing to reach out to you? What's He been saying? Lord, as we commune together, my prayer is that not only will we remember You, but we'll remember that You're real and alive and that You're raised. And through the resurrection of Jesus, we have hope. We can be raised from the despair of our life, from the hopelessness that sometimes we live in. We can be raised from the discouragement that overtakes us. And Lord, ultimately, we will be raised from the dead. We will come to life for eternity. This is the promise of the resurrection. And Lord, this is the promise of a God who calls our name. Jesus. Amen.
stand as we sing. Alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope, no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, my life began. The ash was redeemed, only beauty remains, and my orphan heart was given a name. And my mourning grew quiet, my feet rose to dance. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Released from my chains, I'm a prisoner no more. My shame was the ransom he faithfully bore. And he canceled my debt and he called me his friend. When death was arrested, my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. Oh, it's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Oh, my Savior displayed on a criminal's cross, and darkness rejoiced as though heaven had lost. But then Jesus arose with our freedom in hand. That's when death was arrested, my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Come on, church, sing out. Oh, we're free, free, forever we're free. Come join the song of all the redeemed. Yes, we're free, free, forever, amen. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, we're free, free, forever we're free. Come join the song of all the redeemed. Yes, we're free, forever, amen. When death was arrested, my life began. Oh, we're free, forever we're free. Come join the song of all the redeemed. Yes,
Everyone here, Mary's story is our story. Everyone here. Think about this. When Mary went to that tomb, Jesus had already been raised. In AD 33 or whenever that was, Jesus was raised before she got there. But it wasn't until she heard him call her name that she believed. Everyone here, he's calling your name. He's calling out Scott, Lindsay, Ashley, Jerry, Brian, Alyssa, Colton, Elizabeth, Miles, Megan, Landon, Danny, Hannah, Shayla, Caitlin, your name. He's calling your name. The resurrection is real, and Jesus is calling you. And this can be your day. This can be your day when you trade in Black Friday for Resurrection Day. Happy Easter.
Let's continue in worship this evening. Out together.
By your spirit I will rise from the ashes of your feet. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your spirit soldiers watching vain was borrowed for 3 days. His body there would not remain. Our God is from the grave. God is from the grave.
This is our story. We sing our story out. His name is victory. He knows our name.
Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. The resurrected King is
Let's continue in worship this evening. This is our story. We're going to sing this out. Let's put our hands together as we sing this out as we exit this service this evening. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? Come on. It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive, and all my failures I tried to hide. Sound familiar? It was my tomb till I met you. Then you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Come on, we have reason to celebrate tonight. Let's put our hands together as we sing. Mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. Sing it out. The old made new. Jesus, when I met you, oh, then you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into Come on, sing that. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy. The chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan. You called me a citizen of heaven. Sing! When I was broken, you were my healer. Your love is the air that I breathe in. I have a future, my eyes are open. When you call my name, shout! I went out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Call my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Happy Easter. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.